This episode is brought to you by Amazon Prime. There's nothing sweeter than baking cookies during the holidays. With Prime, I get all my ingredients delivered right to my door, fast and free, no last-minute store trips needed. And of course, I blast my favorite holiday playlist on Amazon Music. It's the ultimate soundtrack for creating unforgettable memories. From streaming to shopping, it's on Prime. Visit Amazon.com/Prime to get more out of whatever you're into.
You know, rarely does it happen, but on occasion there are days where the show starts and I'm not quite ready for the show to start. I needed like a minute more. I was arguing with people who were wrong on the internet, and that takes time and energy. We got a lot of idiots out there today, and they all needed to be made sure I told them that they were idiots and liars. The Democrats who have participated in this big lie about Joe Biden being competent for office are now out blatantly misrepresenting the United States Supreme Court's decision today on Trump immunity. It was a solid decision by the United States Supreme Court and complicates things pretty significantly for Jack Smith, the prosecutor, but it doesn't actually end the case. He can still prosecute Donald Trump. The Supreme Court made clear today that Jack Smith can prosecute for things that were not acts of office, but individual acts of the president that stand outside the law, personal acts. And of course, the progressives are going hysterical on this one. Now, if someone is listening, well, you know what? No, I'm going to, y'all forgive me. I must be somewhat unprofessional here real quick and text someone and say, I'm streaming, but it isn't working from that side. They'll know what I mean. Okay, so I hope you had a good weekend. It is Eric Erickson. The phone number is 877-973-7425. Should you wish to be on the program, please pray for Philip. Looks like Stamkos is not going back to the Tampa Lightning, and all of the Tampa fans are heartbroken, and well, we may have to do a well check on Philip here before it's over. So let's begin with the big news. I'm going to tie everything together because I'm a professional. Today, in a 6-3 decision, the United States Supreme Court said that the President of the United States can be prosecuted. Yes, can be prosecuted for things that were done while in office that were not things related to his job. The holding from the synopsis: under our constitutional structure of separated powers, the nature of presidential power entitles a former president to absolute immunity from criminal prosecution for actions within his conclusive and preclusive constitutional authority. And he is entitled to at least presumptive immunity from prosecution for all his official acts. However, there is no immunity for unofficial acts. And just because the president acts and says he has immunity does not mean he does. Trump asserts a far broader immunity than the limited one the court recognizes. The president enjoys no immunity for his unofficial acts, and not everything the president does is official, even if he thinks it is. The president is not above the law. But under our system of separated powers, the president may not be prosecuted for exercising core constitutional powers and is entitled to at least presumptive immunity for prosecution for his official acts. If the president claims authority to act, but in fact exercises mere individual will and authority without law, the court may say so. One of the issues of this case is that Jack Smith, the prosecutor, commingled acts that were official and acts that were unofficial, and said that the president used official acts to aid and abet the unofficial acts and therefore can be prosecuted for the official acts. And the Supreme Court of the United States says absolutely not. You cannot prosecute the president for his official acts, nor can you use the deliberations of official acts to prosecute unofficial acts. Of course, the left has immediately seized on the SEAL Team 6 hypothetical. Sonia Sotomayor in the minority basically says if the president wants to assassinate his political rival now, he totally can, which is not true at all. In fact, the Supreme Court says that the president is bound by the rule of law and the Constitution, and that there are acts presidents say are official acts or acts within his power that are clearly not. For example, the president cannot violate the civil rights of American citizens. Assassinating an American citizen in this country would preclude the president from being would not preclude the president from being prosecuted. He could. The left is hysterical about this, but it's they would be hysterical anyway. And the reason they're hysterical is this. You need to understand the parameters of this case to understand this. The National Press Corps has been telling us about Donald Trump and his big lie. The big lie has always meant the Nazis and the Holocaust. The phrase "the big lie," you need to understand, was used against Donald Trump because it was related to the Nazi regime. And I have long opposed the press corps referring to the stolen election as the big lie because that phrase directly implicates the Nazis and the Holocaust. But they did not care. And so which is a bigger lie? That the President of the United States claimed that his election was stolen, or that every Democratic politician and much of the press corps together have participated in the big lie that Joe Biden was competent? I would argue it is a bigger lie to tell the American public that the man with the nuclear codes and the power to assassinate, that's a bigger lie than Donald Trump claiming the election was stolen. The big lie is the Democrats and the media together lying about Joe Biden's competence. And their strategy to get around the revelation of Joe Biden's competence was lawfare. They wanted to lock Donald Trump in prison and dare Americans to vote for Donald Trump. Their house of cards has collapsed because the Alvin Bragg prosecution has been seen by everyone to be politically motivated. After all, the judge himself gave money to, quote unquote, stop Donald Trump and his right-wing legacy. The other case in Georgia with Fani Willis, she overplayed her hand, and it is being held up by appellate courts. And then there are the two Jack Smith cases. The relevant, credible case is the classified documents case, which I don't actually think this case impacts, although Judge Cannon might say it does. I think she'll get reversed. But the big case is the Jack Smith prosecution on January 6th. The Democrats decided they wanted to stop Donald Trump in courts because they weren't sure Joe Biden could beat him. The Democrats engaged in a big lie about Joe Biden's competence. They sought to cover it up, and they have failed to do so. Their house of cards is falling. The public theory of the Democrats' case against Donald Trump has always been that people would buy their democracy is under attack argument. Their private case against Donald Trump has always been, we've got to throw him in jail to beat him. And now they can't. And that's why the Democrats are panicked about the Supreme Court case. That's why they can't be honest about the Supreme Court case. Consider me shocked that the people who engaged in the big lie on Joe Biden's competence are now lying about the Supreme Court case. And what we are seeing is not a campaign on the verge of ditching the campaign. We're not seeing a candidate who looks like he's walking away. What we are seeing is the gaslighting. What we are seeing is the circling of the wagons. Jen Psaki, White House propagandist, former press secretary at MSNBC.
with his family for a photo shoot. The trip was pre-planned and announced a week ago, and honestly did not raise any alarm bells to me. But its existence has fueled a lot of speculation about what they might discuss, given how close his family and how important his family is to him. And the speculation is not going to stop anytime soon. But right now, it's also important to remember there is no real indication that Joe Biden plans to step aside. And he and the campaign seem to be quite invested in the fight to keep going. In his first rally following the debate, we saw a completely different, totally different Joe Biden from the one we saw on the debate stage the night before.
I know I'm not a young man. State the obvious. Well, I know. I don't walk as easy as I used to. I don't speak as smoothly as I used to. I don't debate as well as I used to. But I know what I do know. I know how to tell the truth.
And she's circulating that and saying this is competent Joe Biden. They can't push Joe Biden out of the race. So they're circling the wagons. You've got John Fetterman. He went on Fox News to make the case.
And that whole abandoned Biden thing, that's the dumbest I've ever heard. I mean, if you are more inclined to vote for a Democrat or be a Democrat, if you're willing to walk away from Joe Biden, you're by defecting helping Trump. And that's really it is. And if
you're helping Trump, if you want Joe Biden to go away, Wes Moore, the popular Democratic governor of Maryland.
Are you confident that the only person, the only Democrat in America that could beat Donald Trump is Joe Biden?
Joe Biden is our nominee. Joe Biden is our leader. And Joe Biden has earned and Joe Biden deserves the confidence, the respect, and frankly, the partnership that we now have to provide to him.
And you've got Raphael Warnock, the senator from Georgia.
Let me start with the debate. President Biden had one goal: to prove to voters that he was capable of serving another 4 years in office. By all accounts, he did not meet his own benchmark. Your hometown paper, the Atlanta Journal-Constitution, has joined the list of newspapers calling for him to drop out. Do you think President Biden should drop out of this race, Senator?
Oh, absolutely not. You know, they say if it's Sunday morning, it's meet the press. I'll tell you as a pastor, it's for me, it's church time. And I can tell you that there have been more than a few Sundays when I wish I had preached a better sermon. But after the sermon was over, it was my job to embody the message.
That's Raphael Warnock. Jim Clyburn, the powerful Democratic House member.
So let's not think about all of the stuff that we may read about, what we may think about, what we may speculate about. Listen to the American people. Come out here among them, feel them, and to have the benefit of their emotions when you sit down to write your editorials.
He is not happy with the editorials calling for Joe Biden to step aside. You know, the Democrats have long said that the Republicans would never stand up to Donald Trump, that the Republicans were the ones who would not speak truth to power when they needed to, and they were provoking a constitutional crisis. The Democrats are exactly who they said the Republicans were. It's the Democrats who know Joe Biden should step aside, but are refusing to. And the members of the media and the Democrats who have been complicit in this big lie for Joe Biden, they now are acting shocked and stunned. They all knew. They just can't admit it. They have to be shocked and stunned. And they're going to pivot and circle the wagons and shame you into voting for Joe Biden. They're going to talk about the ground game a lot. They may have to fire some of Biden's staff. Mika Brzezinski on MSNBC says as much, but the Supreme Court today said Donald Trump, he doesn't have immunity for unofficial acts, but he does for official acts. They got it right. It was a good decision. But the Democrats, in reading the decision, realized that their plan to beat Trump all along was not premised on telling the American public he was a threat to democracy. Their plan all along was to throw Donald Trump in jail and distract from Joe Biden's mental decline. Their plan is now sunk. Their theory of the race out the door. And they've got nothing other than a dementia-addled 81-year-old who the public has now seen for themselves is not mentally fit for the office of the presidency of the United States. You may not like Trump. You may think he should be the one to drop out. But he's the one who knows who he is and remembers where he is, unlike Joe Biden. Hello and welcome. It is Eric Erickson here across the nation. I do have call screening today. Can take your calls about all of this stuff. We're going to limit calls today to the problems with the Democrats, the debate in Biden, and the Supreme Court decision. I'm happy to answer your questions on any of these Supreme Court decisions today. We'll get into the Supreme Court decisions in the second hour, though, really, because actually the biggest case today was not the Trump immunity case. The biggest case today is what seems to be a very boring case. Corner Post Incorporated versus Board of Governors of the Federal Reserve System. Seems to be a very boring post, or not post, very boring decision. But in fact, it is, between that and the Looper Bright case, two of the most important decisions the Supreme Court has released in the last 20 years. And that's not hyperbole. We'll get into it. Because what it's going to bring is a wave of litigation against the bureaucracy. Essentially, what this case will do is tell the bureaucrats, the federal government, when a party switches, you can't just change the rules. Once regulations are in place, you can't just suddenly change your mind on the regulations because you don't like the other party. That'll hurt Republicans. It'll hurt Democrats as well. It'll force Congress to do its job. We'll get into all that later. I want to take your phone calls when we come back. 877-973-7425. Right now, I got to tell you, Americans for Prosperity, they've got their Secure Border, SecureAmerica.com website up and running. Secure Border, SecureAmerica.com. To remind you of common sense conservative solutions in which we can easily secure the border, easily protect our citizens, and easily stop the ecological and humanitarian disaster that's happening at our border. If you want to find out about those policies, from how effectively you could build a wall, how you can use technology solutions to supplement the wall, what funding there's available for Border Patrol agents, and how we can advance that funding, and new judges to hear the amnesty cases, it's all at Secure Border, SecureAmerica.com. And also, Americans for Prosperity will help you get involved in the system so you can encourage your legislators to do what's right. All you have to do is go to Secure Border, SecureAmerica.com, find out the solutions, and also go to AmericansForProsperity.org, their website. Get involved with them. They have state chapters in about 40 states now, and they're active in the other 10 as well. They train conservatives to be great activists to fight for free markets and free people. Secure Border, SecureAmerica.com, brought to you by Americans for Prosperity. Hello there. Welcome. It is Eric Erickson here. The phone number is 877-973-7425. Should you wish to be on the program, I got to say hello to the folks in Orlando. I was down there this weekend visiting my Uncle Leaf. Boy, did I hear so apparently, now y'all got to understand that there is it is an outside a single generation difference between my father and brother, my Uncle Leaf, his brother Leaf, yes, Leif Erickson, and their oldest siblings. It is a huge span of time that my grandmother was producing children, and my dad's oldest brother was fighting in World War II when my dad and his younger brother were born. It just a big time span. And apparently, so my oldest aunt's husband was the signal operator who got the SOS call for the Titanic. And so I learned that last night, which was interesting. There were ships that got it first, and then he was operating at some station, sounds like in Newfoundland, and got the. I was very fascinated to learn. Also learned I had a cousin who was a spy and other things. In any event, I was in Orlando visiting and ran into several listeners down in Orlando who listen on WDBO. So it was nice to see people. Everybody's very nice. They look somewhat surprised. I will say this. I landed early. God bless Delta. I landed early. And then we sat on the runway for 2 hours because the lightning was so bad They were afraid the ground crews could get struck, so they closed everything down. We sat on the plane for 2 hours. The flight attendants, if anybody knows Ed Bastian, you tell him his flight attendants are the nicest people on planet Earth. They were so nice, absolutely so nice. And the pilot, every single person tried to make everybody as comfortable as possible during that 2 hours of just sitting there with the plane shaking because the wind was so strong. But they were just wonderful people. It was miserable, obviously, and I hadn't eaten. I had not eaten all day, so I was starving to death. But they were great people, and the folks I met listening on WDBA were good. So just nice people. All right, we got to move on. I want to start with your phone calls, 877-973-7425. Daniel, you're up first. Welcome. How are you?
Hey, Eric. First of all, I hope you and your family have a happy 4th of July and coming up. And every time I pass you, I think of your wife dragging a truck. I was like, I wonder if his wife can drag it.
Yeah. She's assessing her broken toes today to see if she's going to be able to get in shape in time for the next one.
Okay. Well, let me get quick to my thing. So the lower ruling come down. You probably have more understanding. Went down to the lower courts to make a decision, and I think one of the outlets I read that it could diminish the trials from starting before the election. And if that's the case, it's in favor of Trump, I'm sure, but when and what's going to happen after the election with this year, and what decisions does the lower court have to make? So,
okay, that's okay. Great. Daniel, great question. Okay, so the Supreme Court decision today, Trump versus the United States, essentially says the President of the United States has absolute immunity from official acts of the President of the Constitution and is presumed to have immunity when he does things that are within the color of the power of his office, essentially. If it seems to be an official act of the president, he's probably got immunity. But that there are things that the president does that are outside the bounds of the office of the president, even though he may claim that they are within the bounds, they're not. And so what the lower courts have to do is they've got to look and see, is this an act of the president or is this the act of the man who is president of the United States right now? So Amy Coney Barrett, in her concurring opinion, essentially provides the prosecutors a roadmap for prosecution. She says, for example, the President of the United States has no power over, control over, or oversight capacity over the Speaker of the House of the state of Arizona or the elections in the state of Arizona as president. And he has no power to get the Secretary of State of Georgia, Brad Raffensperger, to find him 11,000 some odd votes. Sounds like she's saying that the president has no oversight over elections at the state level, so that's clearly not an official act of the president, so prosecute him on that. But the president does have the power to get the Attorney General of the United States to inquire about civil rights violations, and so you can't prosecute him on that. All this is to say that this is going to stretch this case out for years as courts have to litigate first, was this an official act of the president or not? And then he can be prosecuted once all that's settled. So this is going to go on for a very long time. Here's a quote from the case. The president may discuss potential investigations and prosecutions with his attorney general and other Justice Department officials to carry out his constitutional duty to take care of the laws to be faithfully executed. People are claiming that this is the end of DOJ independence. The DOJ was never independent. It was never independent. It is a executive branch body under the powers of the presidency. So here's the way this is going to play out. If Trump loses in November, the case could go on, but it's going to go on a very long time. If he wins, the case is over. It's dead. I mean, he's going to fire all of them anyway. This probably, here's my guess that Judge Cannon may interpret this case in the classified documents case to throw out the classified documents case. I suspect on appeal that she will be reversed. That'll go to the Supreme Court, which I think would uphold the appeal because the president in the classified documents case didn't follow proper procedure. John Roberts, in several of his cases when Donald Trump was president, said, look, the president has power to do things like add a question to the census. But there's a procedure to get that done, and the president has to follow that procedure. And if he doesn't, he can't do it. What Republicans have argued wrongly is that if a president says a document is classified or unclassified, the document's unclassified. Except that's not really true. They want you to believe it, and it's all spin. It's as much spin as what the Democrats do. The truth is that the president can declassify any document he wants to declassify, but there is a process he has to go through of notice to relevant agencies and the like to declassify that document. Donald Trump didn't do that. He didn't follow those procedures. So I think based on those Supreme Court precedents on both the immigration decision by Trump and the census decision by Trump, the Supreme Court would say he didn't follow the process. He can do this, but he didn't follow the process. Therefore, he can be prosecuted. But by the time he's president, it doesn't matter. And these cases are going to drag out forever. The Democrats tried to prosecute Donald Trump into oblivion, and they failed. The Democrats are just flat out incompetent when it comes to this stuff. They tried to lawfare their way into the presidency, and it's not going to work out for them. Lisa, you're going to be up next. Welcome. How are you?
Hey, Eric. Great. I first of all, I was traveling down from Clarksville to Warner Robins last weekend and drove right through Macon and thought.
Oh, fantastic!
Anyway, what I was calling about, my theory is with the Democrats, surrounding both Joe Biden and propping him up right now, as they always seem to come together, like the Republicans don't. My theory on all of this began, probably maybe about 4 years ago. I think it was about that long ago. Nancy Pelosi stood at the podium one day and said something about the 25th Amendment. And, oh, no, we're not going to use it on Trump. We're going to use it on Biden or something like that. I can't find the clip. But anyway, that's my theory, is that perhaps they're circling the wagon so they all get together and all the Democrats invoke the 25th Amendment on Joe Biden now.
Okay.
That's just my theory. I'll let you go so you can answer.
All right. I've gotten a lot of these, Lisa. Thanks for that. I don't think they will invoke the 25th Amendment on Joe Biden. First of all, how is the 25th Amendment invoked? The vice president has to do it. Now, interestingly enough, we're going to get into this in the next hour. The Biden team has concluded what I told all of you on Friday was the case. We had people call me and argue with me on Friday, and I told them I was right, and I knew I was right because I used to be a campaign finance lawyer. And the Biden team has concluded exactly as I told you on Friday. In fact, I'm going to turn on my recorder. I'm going to cut this clip. I had people argue with me last week I was wrong on this, and I knew I was right because I practiced this area of law. If Joe Biden steps aside, the only person on planet Earth who can get his campaign war chest is Kamala Harris. I said that on Friday, and pundits on the left and the right told me I was wrong, and I knew I was right. The Biden team and its lawyers have concluded I'm right. Only Kamala Harris can get the money. Why? Because she is part of the Biden-Harris ticket. And if Joe Biden steps aside, only you can have an open convention. And if you pick someone other than Kamala Harris, they're not legally entitled to the money. That's campaign finance law. It's not my opinion. That's the law. So the problem for the Democrats is Kamala Harris is less popular than Joe Biden. The only way to enact the 25th Amendment to shove Joe Biden aside is to get Kamala Harris and a majority of the cabinet to agree. The cabinet members are loyal to Joe Biden. They're not loyal to Kamala Harris. It would look self-serving for Kamala Harris to do it. After all this time, make her look like she wants the money. And Biden doesn't have to give her the campaign money anyway, by the way. He doesn't have to give her the money. I don't think they can enact the 25th Amendment. They should. After all the talk about enacting the 25th Amendment every time something happened to Donald Trump, long ago should the Democrats have enacted the 25th Amendment on Joe Biden. It shows you what political opportunists they were to keep raising the 25th Amendment when Donald Trump was in office. Now they don't want to with Joe Biden. What I suspect will happen is Biden will be the nominee, and after he has the nomination secured, And he can't win if he steps aside as Kamala Harris. If he tries to win and he does win, he will step aside at some point for Kamala Harris. This election is really about Donald Trump versus Kamala Harris. But Kamala Harris being less popular than Joe Biden means Joe Biden can't go anywhere because she does not have the ability to beat Donald Trump. Also, the moral of the story is when I tell you something about campaign finance law, I do know what I'm talking about. I'm not an expert in everything, but I actually practiced that area of law. All right, Charlie, you're up next. Welcome.
Hey, Eric.
Hey.
Love your show. Quick comment on the debate from last week. I'll preface this by saying that I am a Trump supporter and will be voting for him. But boy, I got to tell you, the only thing that I think saved Trump Thursday night was the fact that Biden was such a train wreck. I was screaming at the television multiple times because Trump was just so inarticulate and couldn't do anything more than the 7-year-old boy who's saying, my bike is faster than yours, or I can run faster than you. It's just so frustrating sometimes with Trump that he can't deliver a better, more articulate message.
Okay, I listen. When I say these things, I get accused of having Trump derangement syndrome. I do know how to separate in my personal views of Trump versus my policy views where I like him. I don't think he gave strong answers. And my point on that is Donald Trump won that debate within the first 30 minutes. And the problem is he didn't realize he had won it, and he kept trying to win it, and that then started falling flat with people. And he did give the golf answers and stuff like that. Yeah, I think your assessment is right. But it doesn't matter because I don't think he's going to be debating anyone other than Joe Biden, so he doesn't have to have the stellar debate performance against Joe Biden, who I don't think can recover for the next. He's going to try to recover for the next debate, Charlie. But Donald Trump did not have a brilliant debate performance. He just stood next to Joe Biden. If I stand next to a midget, I'm not the tallest person, but I'm going to look like a giant. When you stand next to a mental midget, you may not be the smartest person, but you look like you're Mensa quality. All Donald Trump had to do was stand next to Joe Biden and point out that he didn't understand what Joe Biden said, and he didn't think Joe Biden understood what Joe Biden said. And suddenly you've won the debate. He just needed to stop once he won the debate. He didn't have to keep going like that. But he won the debate because Joe Biden lost so bad, so bad. 877-973-7425. Y'all, I got to tell you, the Eden Pure Thunderstorm, I carried it with me. Thankfully, I did not need it at the Hilton Garden Inn in Winter Park, Florida, but I had it just in case because it wipes out odors so well. The Eden Pure Thunderstorm is an air purifier, and it's an odor eliminator. You can get 3 of them for less than $200 and save $200 at EdenPureDeals.com. The discount code is ERIC3, E-R-I-C-K, the number 3. There's no space, ERICK3. You go to EdenPureDeals.com. You put in Eric 3. You can run the Eden Pure Thunderstorm off of USB power in your car or plug it into the wall, and it works. It is an air purifier. It gets rid of the dust. It gets rid of the pollen. You don't have a filter subscription. It uses electrostatic plates, so you don't have to ever have a filter subscription. And then it wipes out odors, smoke odors, litter box odors, pet odors, frying odors, cooking odors, musty odors, you name it. I've used it in a rental car because someone hotboxed in the car, and it stunk to high heaven, and the Eden Pure Thunderstorm wiped out the odors. It just works. EdenPureDeals.com. The discount code, ERIC3, E-R-I-C-K-3. Hello, welcome. It's Eric Erickson. This hour of the program is brought to you by First Liberty Building and Loan in Noonan, Georgia. Now, I say Noonan, Georgia to highlight this. They can help you if you're in Sacramento, California, listen on KSTE. If you're in Staunton, Virginia, they can help you there as well. Tulsa, Oklahoma City. By the way, we just picked up a station in Oklahoma City. Welcome. So they can help you. They can help your business, I should be more precise. I say Noonan, Georgia, because they're in not small town Georgia, but they're in a suburban, wonderful, historic city, and they make their own lending decisions there. They're not in New York. They're not in Washington. They love to help small businesses grow. The Frost family's been doing this since the 90s. I mentioned that as well because if you need a lender and you want that lender to have a relationship with you, well, you're not suddenly going to need a new lender tomorrow at your bank because you're going to have the same people. They've been there since the 90s. So if you're buying a building, buying a franchise, you need an equipment loan, they can help you. Doesn't matter where your business is in the United States, they can help. FirstLibertyGA.com. All their contact info is there. FirstLibertyGA.com. Go check them out. Now, listen, I want to give you the actual state of play in the Democratic process for the presidency and where Joe Biden is. Bill O'Reilly, News HQ, over the weekend said his Democratic sources say Joe Biden is going to drop out. I'm willing to bet you Bill O'Reilly doesn't have Democratic sources telling him that Joe Biden is going to drop out. What Bill O'Reilly has is a bunch of news stories he has read to mean the Democrats are pressuring Joe Biden to drop out, and he's playing the odds. I happen to know the top Democratic strategists. I happen to be friends with some of them from my days at CNN and Fox. And I can tell you that they're all furious that Joe Biden is not going to drop out, and they think he must. He might drop out. He might drop out. What it looks like, though, all the signs right now are that he's going to stay in. I want to talk to you about the Supreme Court cases, but I think it's more important that I review the weekend with you over Joe Biden, who's now going to pivot to focus on Donald Trump and this immunity decision and the need to prosecute Donald Trump where they can. I really think that right now, Joe Biden has no intention of dropping out of the race, and there is no avenue by which the Democrats can force Joe Biden out of the race. That's something I think most people don't realize. There is no way to force Joe Biden out of this race unless Joe Biden himself wants to leave the race. If you can't understand that, you cannot understand the dynamics that we are about to face in this presidential election season. We'll be right back with your calls as well.